So, welcome to Series 2 of the hashtag Stay Well podcast as we look at mental health and well-being implications and ideas through the coronavirus and the COVID-19 crisis. And today I'm delighted to welcome Jason Davies, Inside Out role model from 2019, and also Group Head of Risk and Internal Audit. Is that right? Have I got that right, Jason?
Yep.
I don't like to get the titles wrong. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining us here on this interview. And I understand you've not been so well recently yourself, and we'll come on to that. But how are you today? What's your form score? What's your score out of 10?
Form today is probably a 7. I think I've had a good morning. As you say, just getting better from not being well, and definitely learning. Because I've been at home now for quite a few days, learning I'm going to have to change my approach at home.
Yeah.
Because it's quite easy to get into some patterns and then go, crikey, that's a bit dull. So yeah, but good, thank you. Good.
Yeah, good. And sharing back, I'm an 8 out of 10 today. I think I'm pushing myself a bit hard, so I've got to watch what those numbers over the next few days. But so far good, and really good to be able to connect and talk about some of these issues. So you shared with me earlier that you've been unwell. Can you talk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd had a really busy start to the year. I'd done quite a bit of travelling, not to any of the key countries, but quite a bit of travelling. And I got ill towards the end of Feb, beginning of March, and the usual bad cold, but then turning into, I would obviously describe it as very serious man flu at the time.
Yeah.
But it did knock me out. So it was 2 or 3 days in bed, and then up and about, the usual paracetamol and everything else. But then it kind of got worse and got into my chest. Saw the doctor, I had a chest infection. And then that didn't clear up with antibiotics. So it was just getting worse. And breathing was getting hard. So went for some tests on Monday where, as I said earlier, went to the Corona pod, saw what was going on in one of those. They've, it was different. So they're now not just giving the tests, they're doing tests on you, things like chest x-rays. And the good news was your chest is clear, you've been ill, you're getting better, but we're not going to test you. So that's where I am. So I'm finishing a second course of antibiotics, and I've got another 7 days to self-isolate. And then I move around. The cough comes back when I go out into the cold, and so I don't go out because I think if you cough around people at the moment. Yeah,
I know. I totally understand that. And so I guess you can't say whether you've had the virus or not. And how does that create any anxiety? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's difficult, if I'm honest. It made me quite anxious when I was there on Monday. I mean, it was difficult enough to drive there, but because looking for some answers, looking for certainty, and particularly because I've got some family members who, whenever I can, I'd like to visit, but they are more vulnerable. So having some clarity will be important. But yeah, I think, I have had, I would say, a lot of anxiety over the last week, 10 days. Keeping busy has been helping with that. Doing the things, we normally do, meditating and talking to people. But yeah, it's that lack of certainty, I think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will be experiencing that, won't they? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to them? And we just sort of don't know really. And we're trying to predict the future, but it's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. And I think, look, if I work for Tesco. If you look at some of the behaviours in stores that we've all seen on social media, I think people, the anxiety plays out, I think, around control. We all like to feel in control of something, and the one thing you can control is filling up your cupboards with whatever you think is right. But you're right. I think we don't know. It's uncharted, and that's hard. But just keep being kind to people, which is one of the messages coming through consistently, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, and are you used to working remotely? Is that something that you're well geared up to do at Tesco?
Yeah, very much so. So we embraced, when we changed campuses about 3 years ago. We shrank our office space quite considerably, partly to control costs and everything else. But the reality is then we embraced flexible working. So most people, everyone can do it. Most of my team, probably about 40% of the time, they're working remotely. So touch wood, we've had no issues around, how to do it, having the right kit, etc. We've got 2 or 3 different types of tech, and people are used to doing it, and we're just embracing it more and more.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all going to end up pretty good at remote tech by the end of this, aren't we? So it's good. You're good. You got that head start.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it didn't stop. Yesterday Microsoft Teams went down for 2 or 3 hours globally, but no, we've got the head start. And I think, I read an article today. I think a guy was quoted yesterday about we're going to start to look at the world as before Corona and after Corona.
Yeah.
And, the reality is I have a short commute, but for somebody who has a long commute, if they look at what they can achieve with all that time over the next few weeks or months, I think it's going to fundamentally change how people approach their jobs and how employers work.
Yeah, and I think using that time, one of the things that I was speaking about with one of the other participants in this series, Joe Davies, was you probably get a little bit more brain space to do that creative thinking. Would you agree with that? Are you finding that?
Yeah, I would say that's been absolutely the answer. Typically, some of my best work gets done when I'm reflecting at home, or occasionally I go to other places, libraries and other things. On a personal note, probably the last 7 or 8 days, not as much. I think I have been totally overdoing social media. I've been looking at my screen time at the end of the night and going, good God. But generally, yes. And, this morning, again, breaking that pattern, I made a conscious decision about how much time I was going to spend on it. And I'm already feeling better for it, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and I'm getting a strong sense from the British public, from the public globally, actually, from what I am seeing in conversations I'm having, of this sense of pulling together and helping people out. Now, I guess from a Tesco perspective, and manning the stores and making sure that you can get the product to people that need it through a challenging time, how are you going about sort of doing that, and how well are people pulling together?
Well, look, I mean, it's incredible in terms of the stores and what's happening, and I think it's a great opportunity for people to recognise what an important thing it is we do as food retailers, within the store, and it kind of brings the purpose side of it to life. So we're working very actively on that front. As I say, all of the head office people are signing up for at least 2 shifts a week, subject to any direct health concerns.
Yeah.
But I think it's landing very positively, and I think clearly all the retailers are taking the right actions now around the rationing, and just saying, look, we're going to help you help yourselves a little bit, because we do all have to focus on the more vulnerable people. I have 2 parents who live up north. They're both over 75. They've both got health conditions, and those are the guys that we need to focus on in the short term.
Yeah, and what more do you think we can be doing to help that cohort, those vulnerable people?
Well, one of the things, one of my contacts on LinkedIn, he only sent it yesterday, but he lives quite a long way away from where his parents live.
Yeah.
He's arranged effectively with some neighbours that almost like a parent swap. You're in the right area, and so one of the, I think, I don't know whether he's going to try and give it scale, but I don't know what you would call Tinder for parent swapping. But if you put your details in, and turns out I might live near your mother, so I can drop stuff to her. You might live near my, it's that kind of thing. And I think those are the examples where you give up a bit of your time in helping people, but there is some benefit for you as well. So
I think that's brilliant. Tinder for parent swapping. I'm going to watch that space.
Yeah,
there's probably a catchier name for it, isn't there?
Yeah, there probably is. But the idea, very simple idea. Put in postcode of your parents. People would pop up and go, "Yeah, I live within 5 minutes. Do you mind doing this and this?" And all you're giving is your time. There won't be a swap, obviously, because people live everywhere. But I'd happily give up, an hour a week to go and help someone's parents if they live locally to me. Once I can go and talk to them.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that's really good. And you personally, you've been isolated for one reason or another for a bit of time now. Obviously, some people are starting that journey of being removed from their social connections, their work connections, their colleagues, their support networks.
Yeah.
What would be your 2 or 3 top tips for people who are embarking that journey to help ease that transition into a slightly new way of working for the next period of time?
Yeah, I think giving yourself some structure and some guardrails, which I typically have, but I've lost them a bit with being ill. So, and that can be everything from, wearing a shirt because you're doing video conferences to that kind of thing, to certain times. I think a bit of structure. I think scheduling quite a few catch-ups. So we've seen a lot of stuff, ironically, since the office moved home beginning of this week, my diary's probably been busier.
Yes.
But I think that helps because people like that structured catch-up.
Yeah.
And then the other one, from very much from personal experience, would be keeping in touch with loved ones, but trying to reduce your social media time and time, because it's it's good to check the news, it's good to know what's going on, but I think one day over the last week I've spent something like 5 hours on.
Okay.
I don't really use social media, so it's news, but it wasn't healthy.
Yeah,
I didn't go to bed feeling particularly good.
I think you're right, and I think that the reporting of this this issue, this crisis, if we want to call it that, without making it sound worse, it's been pretty negative, hasn't it? I mean, I think there are some good news stories out there. I put a list of them out on LinkedIn today. But there is some good news, but we're really focusing on sort of catastrophizing it a little bit, and I think what I can see, that's rising, contributing to a rise in sort of anxiety generally out there.
Definitely, and I think as just one shout out, there's an article in today's Telegraph, Alison Pearson, which I thought was brilliant around a balanced view of what's going on and some positivity. I'm on a few WhatsApp groups with friends that would share certain activities, and definitely I have seen examples of, in the last 3 or 4 days, some people kind of losing it slightly on WhatsApp. So one might share something that is unofficial, slightly alarmist, and the virtual kicking that person is then getting, and so it's out of character, and I say to everyone, calm down. And there are groups. There was a good article in I think it was on CNN actually about things like AA meetings are being stopped, and so you've got a whole group of people whose entire well-being is aligned to a social interaction, and in the same way for older people you've got church. So I think that's going to make it hard.
Yeah, and we have to be creative and find ways to respond to that. And it's good to hear that people are reporting in a balanced way, and I know there's a lot of innovation going in to see how we can counteract some of those challenges.
Yeah, and I'm surprised BT haven't already started rerunning the old Maureen Lipman adverts. At the end of the day, everybody's parents have got a phone.
Yeah.
Believe it, we're a whole generation. I'm just the other side of that, but there's a whole generation who don't really call each other. It's all messaging. But pick up the phone and talk to people, or be in a conference. Just do that, because for old people in particular, my parents, 3 times a day now I'm talking to them. So I have to time box it just for everyone's sanity. Pick up the phone and talk to people.
I think that's good, simple advice, and it's something we can all do. Jason, thank you so much. Before we finish, and I know we've spoken in the past about your gong collection, and so for me, the sound bath and the Tibetan gongs and the musical therapy I found quite transformational, actually, and a real ability to immediately kind of hit a meditative state. But talk me through briefly your interest in the gongs.
Yeah, so look, I've been meditating and going to meditation classes probably for about 4 years since I had challenges at work and I had to take a bit of time off. It's been a big part of my, rebuilding my resilience and reshaping what I do. As part of that, gongs were introduced. My partner is a yoga teacher as well as training as a therapist, and she's also very actively into them. So we have started a collection. The big one, which comes from a place that, it's just ironic name.
Brilliant.
We have a few, and you can do things at home. I mean, this one, it doesn't get used too much at home because of the size of it. But
fantastic.
But they're very powerful. There won't be many, I guess, gong baths going on at the moment, but it's a really powerful thing to do, and along with the bowls and everything else.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. There is a good friend of mine who runs a great gong business that's obviously had to postpone their classes for a while, and we're going to try and again use this platform to work out whether we can do something virtually and get it mic'd up properly. So watch this space on that one.
Very good.
So Jason, thank you so much for sharing. This is the platform for Inside Out X, where we're going to be bringing remote events to the workplace. But thank you for sharing your perspectives and insight from someone who's been living through isolation for one reason or another in the last few weeks. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks very much, Rob. Take care.